Hi, I'm Yvonne Rediger. I am the author of the Musgrave Landing Mysteries and also the Adam Norcross Mysteries and the urban fantasy series Vic Shapeshifters, which takes place on Vancouver Island. I also have written a few romantic suspense novels, The Common Touch and Dive In Heart First, and a short story collection, a few other things. I've been writing seriously since 2015, but prior to that, I've always written. I've always jotted down stories and things that have interested me. My traditional publishers now are Brown Wolf Publishing and Books We Love, or BWL.com. They publish my Adam Norcross mystery and the Musgrave Landing mysteries. My latest novel that has been released this year in 2023 is The Right Road. And this is a novel that takes place in Saskatchewan for the most part. It's also about archaeology. And I had the greatest fun researching this with, just let me read you the dedication because it's got everything in there. Thank you to the Saskatchewan Archaeology Society and the Priestville and District Heritage Museum. One shovelful of dirt can change history. So I had the greatest fun writing this one because I've always been a Time Team fan, and the thought of writing a murder mystery around a dig would always fascinated me. So that's why I started doing this. The Musgrave Landing mysteries all take place on Salt Spring Island in British Columbia, and those are small town, village, cozy mysteries. These Adam Norcross runs, are a slightly more complex. I don't know, not really, but they're just a different backdrop. The Adam Norcross mysteries are a buddy series with RCMP officer Beth Leith and Adam Norcross. And we're not completely sure what Adam does for a living, but it's kind of in the spy industry. So I've had the greatest time with those. I'm looking at the questions that I'm asked to answer. How many hours a day do you write? Usually, when I'm in the thick of it, 2 to 3 hours a day. Or whatever gets me to at least 1,000 words. What one thing would you give up to become a better writer? Sugar. It's my downfall. What is the most important part of your artistic process? Planning. I know a lot of authors like to be pantsers, and there is a certain amount of that in any author's work where inspiration strikes you and you get a better idea on how to do something or how to write something. But for all intents and purposes, if you don't have a plan, how are you going to know where you end up? I've always been a planner, so I like to make sure all the loose ends are tied off in any book, whether it's a romantic suspense or a murder mystery like The Right Road. There's a lot of things people will tell you how to do when you want to write. Basically, you have to find what works for you. But there are a few rules you have to adhere to, and one of them is deadlines. I had a deadline of April for this novel, and I find that tougher than when I just write. And when I'm ready, I just let my publisher know that I have a new novel, and this is, it's for this series, and then they give me a release date, which I find is much easier than having to write to a date. I find that rather tough. It's almost like you've got an English assignment or something. And at my point in life, I really don't want any more deadlines. I used to be a solution architect, enterprise architect in the IT industry, planning projects and getting solutions launched, that kind of thing, and software revisions and things like that. So I had enough of that pressure. So I want as little as possible. There is, don't get me wrong, there's still pressure and things with in the publishing industry, but nowhere near what it was in the private sector. Another question. How do you celebrate when you finish a book? Dinner out. And there are copious amounts of wine and at least one chocolate dessert. As I said, sugar's my downfall. Book questions. Where do you get your ideas? They just come to me. I don't go looking for ideas. I have way too many in my head. I'll probably never write everything that I've ever outlined. All the ideas that come to me get written into a book that it's kind of my reference go-to thing for quotes, funny things I've seen, things that people have said, names. I love to collect names, and that's what I do. So from those, that's how I get my ideas for where to either continue a series or start a new one. What kinds of research do you do, and how long do you spend researching? Well, you're writing. The research is ongoing. Prior to, I will investigate, like when I did the Adam Norcross mystery. These have taken a bit more research than my average ones. The Musgrave Landing mysteries are bakery, cafe, that kind of thing, or a businesswoman, going back to look into things about her family. So it's all stuff I'm kind of familiar with, so that's fine. I can just write from what I know. But when you're writing about a climate change scientist that ends up dead in a ditch or a mountain crevasse, there's something about that you want to make sure you get it all right. So you have to really dig into it. And I have lots of resources for pretty much everything that comes up. I'm very fortunate that way. My extended family have multiple backgrounds in multiple disciplines. In the wrong words, the first Adam Norcross, there was a accident on the highway, so I tapped into my son-in-law's expertise in collisions. He did that for the military, so he also did a few other things, and he helped me out with that. My husband is a great wealth of information when it comes to anything industrial, so and the weapons, that's when I have to use weapons. Myself, I am a PAL holder. I do practice with firearms, and so does my husband and my kids and son-in-law and other various people in our family. So, getting recommendations on what type of weapon would this particular character use for XYZ, piece of cake to get that info. Everyone's so helpful. It's amazing. How do you develop your plot and characters? Well, sometimes they're fashioned after people I've met. Usually someone briefly. I don't typically use people I know. I kind of develop the character from scratch. When a couple of quirky characteristics usually are their basis, something that they like. Book one of Death and Cupcakes from the Musgrave Landing Mysteries. Arlie Birch, or Arlington Birch, which is his full name. He's retired. He couldn't seem to get a job anywhere else. Well, he's a mechanical engineer, and everywhere he tried, people thought he was overqualified for just even basic stuff. And if he wanted to work in his discipline, he had to go back to the city, and he didn't want to do that. So he ends up working in a coffee shop with Jane Westcott. And from there, his son gets involved with Jane, and there's murder, mystery, and mayhem. And the RCMP are involved, and they go looking for someone who's missing. And then they find all sorts of clues that point to Jane, but is it really Jane? Anyway, so from there, Arlie and Jane, both of them had little quirks and stuff from people I've met or people I know or things that have happened to me. So that's really where their characterization comes from. Plots, well, that's a whole other thing. Plots, I usually figure out where the story's going to go right from the get-go. I flesh that out first. What's my beginning, middle, and end going to be? Broad strokes, 5,000-foot view. And then from there I drill down. What part of the book was the most fun to write? Not the book, but I've written 11, so each one has its own quirks and things that were fun. Diving in Heart first was awesome because it was all about scuba diving. My husband and I scuba dive with our daughter and her husband, and we've been doing that for almost 20 years, probably over 20 years now, when I think about it. Anyway, we've been all over the Caribbean diving and whatnot, so I kind of encapsulated a bunch of stuff there, and things like, what would you do with this big dive box? You could probably use it for a lot of other things besides just dive gear. So that's where that one came from. If you met your characters, what would you say to them? I don't know. That's a toughie. Probably, what's your next adventure going to be? What is a significant way your book has changed since the first draft? Oh, all books change. They get better. You can't edit a blank page, so every first draft is just garbage. It's trash, and you have to go back. And for me, there's probably 10 levels of revision for every novel, if not more. And someday I'll write a full nonfiction on how to write and the levels that I go through. I've shared it with a couple other authors, and it's helped them out, so I should actually get it off my tuchus and get it done. How do you feel when you first published your book? My first book, well, that was The Shape of Us, and that was the first book of the Vic Shapeshifters. That came in 55th in about 2,800 entries in Mills and Boon's So You Think You Can Write. And it was supposed to be a romance, but it's a paranormal romance or urban fantasy, if you will. And from there, what those are supposed to be is they were looking to publish them as romances. I came in 55th, so not bad for a first effort, I thought. Anyway, so I self-published that one, and it still remains published today. It's, I think, 99 cents on most platforms. World building with that was unique because it's like shapeshifters are among us, and so are witches and mages and magic and all sorts of things. But no, I had fun doing it, and it was very there was a lot of satisfaction when I realized that it was done, and I'd done it well. I got a lot of compliments on it. It got a lot of reviews. It still gets reviews. The sales on it are still good, and it came out in 2015, so quite happy about that. And the last question I'm going to answer is, where can people who are interested in your books buy your books? If you're in the Saskatchewan, you can buy them from Coles, which is an arm of Chapters Indigo. You can get them from Indigo as well online. You can get them from Kobo, iBooks, all the other, Kindle, whatever. And there's also print books available off Amazon as well. And Barnes & Noble also has print books. You can get them also from, the cheapest place to go is smashwords.com. We do sales there a lot. My publisher does. Both of them, they do that. They put the books on sale probably 3 or 4 times a year, so keep your eye out for that. And also, I've donated a whack of books to libraries all across Canada, and I know some libraries in the States and overseas have purchased some through that application that they use. I don't know what it's called. Over something. Doesn't matter. Anyway, libraries, you can just request it from your library and they can get a hold of it, and that's probably the easiest. Well, this has been fun. Thank you so much. And I sure hope that you find one of my books. These are some of them. And this is another one. I've got more up there on that shelf there. But yeah, just search by my name, YVONNE REDIGER, and you'll find my books. Thanks.